Have with me right here a gentleman who knows a thing or two about economic development, Mr. Saul Kaplan.
Hey Russ, how are
How
you?
you doing? Have a seat right here.
Nice to see you.
Former executive director of the Rhode Island Economic Development Commission, now the CEO of the Business Innovation Factory.
I call those my accidental bureaucrat years.
Okay, sure.
But I loved it. I learned so much
Interesting accent.
about how government delivers value to citizens, and I learned how to think about innovation in a completely different way through the lens of people who live here. I really feel fortunate for all the time that I spent here. I think we created a conversation that still plays out to this day about how do we make innovation and entrepreneurship central to our economy. Having said it, I belong in the private sector, and I'm glad to be at BIF and observing what's going on in the public sector.
I bet. I also am aware that the job was a lot harder when you were the director of the Commerce Corporation than it is now, because you didn't have the economic development tools that we have, or that Stephen Pryor has at what's now become the Commerce Corporation, which is simply a rebranding of the
I don't
organization.
know about harder or easier. They have more tools to play with today
Sure.
than I had. It was always an interesting challenge to talk with leaders here in the state, or prospective company leaders to come here when we didn't have much in the way of a kit bag or tools
Sure.
in order to bring here. But I'll tell you what it did for us. It forced us to make a real strategic argument. What's the real reason for investing here? What's the real reason for situating a business here that isn't about just how many incentives or what the size of the incentive check is? Because we'll never win the game in Rhode Island, even though we have more of those tools today than we've ever had before. Sooner or later, that bucket starts to run dry, and if you didn't create the structural change, it's not going to
Sure.
be sustainable. So,
I would be remiss if I didn't point out that although you were the executive director of the Rhode Island Economic Development Corporation under Governor Kachiri, you left before 38 Studios
Well,
was
thank
enacted.
you for
I want to
pointing
make
that
sure,
out.
just in case anyone's watching, I don't want to give anyone the wrong. He had nothing to do with that. Nothing.
thank you for pointing that out.
You're
Russ.
welcome.
Appreciate
So
that.
you talked about interacting with leaders, and it seems like we had almost anyone who's anyone here in Rhode Island over the last weekend, last several days. Anyone from Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, Vice President Mike Pence. We had probably the biggest name is the Tesla CEO Elon Musk. And we had about 30 governors from
amazing.
across the country. What was your take on the National Governors Association?
Well, first of
Is
all-
something going to come out of it, or tell me?
Well, let's first talk about how it made me feel, and how I hope it made a lot of Rhode Islanders feel. I was really proud, I have to say. I mean, having 30-plus governors here, plus all of the other dignitaries that we had here,
Sure.
pretty cool. Like,
Yeah.
right here in
It was a
Providence,
cool thing.
we were all over the national news. All these important conversations, important nationally and globally, were happening here in Providence. We were the center, for the entire weekend, and I was really proud. I was proud of the way our state showed, how Providence showed. What a great place to come and spend time. But we're a place where important conversations happen that really matter and make a difference. So I felt really good overall about the experience. I'm really glad we did it. I know a lot of folks have been talking about who paid for it, and where did the support come for it.
Sure.
You know what I say? I mean, in the end, does it really matter? You tell me when the last time 20 Rhode Island companies came together with a common shared interest and opened up their checkbook to create something of real value here in Rhode Island. When's the last time they did that?
I'd
pretty
be
cool.
remiss to try and guess.
No,
Yeah,
so
sure.
I think we should be happy about it. I think the governor looked really strong.
She did.
And I think it made the state look really good. I was really proud to be a Rhode Islander this weekend.
Sure, we did get a lot of good press. It seemed to go really smoothly. It went off without a hitch. It was really cool, reading all the AP wire date lines, Providence,
Yeah.
right there. All the news coming out of here. I thought that was a really, really cool, interesting thing. But
Okay, well, there's
will
always a
we-
but.
Yeah, there's always, especially here. Will we get anything out of it? In other words, will someone? I mean, it doesn't have to be Elon Musk. It could be any of the CEOs that were here.
Yeah.
Will we get someone to say, well, Rhode Island, they've got a governor who wants to, who's involved or who's interested in innovation. we're going to open an office, or we're going to open up a small factory or a big factory.
Yep.
You think there's a good shot?
So
that
the
we could
governor and the
get
commerce
some
team,
largest?
the governor and the commerce team has been very focused on this strategy. I think they've been very aggressive and clear about it, and I have to give the governor and the team really high grades, because I know the governor is out talking with senior executives. She is not shy about opening up these conversations, whether it was this weekend with Elon Musk, and we'll talk about that here in a minute, or it's getting on the plane and going somewhere to the senior executive team at GE or Johnson & Johnson, and you saw what happened from those conversations.
Sure.
Right? They were impressed by our governor. They were impressed by the story of what's going on here in the state, and they made, however small, but for Rhode Island, pretty valuable investments here that I think put us on the right trajectory. Now the question is, can you follow up on that?
Sure.
Can you continue to make that happen? At the NGA meeting this weekend, the governor wasted no time in having a conversation, with Elon Musk, and she wasn't shy about making a real ask of him, and she's proven very effective at that. I think we should be encouraged, and we should want her to do a lot more of that.
Sure. Yeah, I think the governor's been very aggressive, as you say, and getting out in front of some of these big decision makers and some of these big names and trying to market Rhode Island. But is there more that we should do here in Rhode Island besides, travel to company headquarters or meet with executives? Should we be changing our business climate or our regulatory climate or our tax structure in such a way to make us more compatible for innovation?
Well, what we should be doing is making ourselves and positioning ourselves as a unique place for innovation at scale. And what do I mean by that?
Yeah.
You've heard me talk about Rhode Island's real secret weapon is its size. Right? We're never going to win the game if we play it the same way as larger states. We're never going to write out larger incentive checks, although it's nice that they have some of those tools to close deals.
Right.
But the real way to position Rhode Island is a place you can innovate. If you listen to what the governor did in her pitch with Elon Musk at Tesla, right, the governor went right for our university strength, our technology and research strength, and said, hey, Elon, I know that you're looking for world-class energy technology and skills, whether it's to power whether it's to power the Tesla, or whether it's power to get into space, or whether it's the solar city. So it's all about energy with him, and she did an effective job of positioning us as a place with know-how and expertise that could play there. I would like for her and the team to do that, but then to go the next step. I think the biggest challenge Elon Musk faces is he's got incredible technology and products and services being developed. What he's got to figure out is how those new models are going to play when they bump up against the traditional industry structure. So if you have an electric car,
Sure.
right, you've got to not just be able to produce the car, but you've got to be able to put up power charging stations so people can charge the cars.
Sure.
You need mechanics who can take care of the cars.
We are seeing more of those
Yep.
charging stations pop up
You will.
around. Sure.
Right. And what we should be doing here in Rhode Island is positioning ourselves in the early days to say, hey, if you've got this new technology emerging, let's take autonomous vehicles, which everyone's talking about, including Elon Musk. Why don't we position Rhode Island as the test bed for that, the place where that entire industry model can play out? Because if it can work here in Rhode Island, it could then be scaled across the country and across the world.
That's
We
interesting.
need to position ourselves as the place where innovation happens, not just the new technology, but the new way to deliver value to the customer and the way it actually works on the ground.
That's really interesting, because I've often heard of a place like Oklahoma City
Yep.
as the place where, McDonald's tested its McRib, or
Right.
some of these other companies have tested their products. We could become something like that here on the East Coast.
And not just testing a consumer product, right? Companies have been testing consumer brands and products, test markets. I'm talking about testing the whole system, because some of the things Elon Musk wants to do aren't just small tweaks to the way these industries work today. Right? When you start talking about autonomous vehicles, you know what has to change in order for that to work. Our whole regulatory structure, our
Right.
whole insurance structure,
Sure.
our whole criminal enforcement structure.
Sure.
Like everything needs to change. And what leaders like Elon Musk need are a place to test the model, right? To actually put the model in place at a small scale, think Rhode Island, think sandbox, so that when it works here in Rhode Island, now we can take it to the larger markets where the customers are. And if we did that, if we positioned ourselves to be really good at that and to create the conditions for that, what the pitch to Elon Musk should have been, here's the problem you're dealing with. You have trouble getting your new models off the whiteboard and putting them onto the ground. Your technologies are starting to come to fruition, but you need to figure out how to make these new markets. And Rhode Island is the place where market makers come to establish entire new models. That's what I would have pitched Elon Musk.
That sounds like a tremendous line of reasoning, because they can test the whole market and they could say this worked or this didn't
Right.
work, and we tested it in Rhode Island and it worked, or
Right.
we tested it in Rhode Island and it didn't work, we tweaked it and it worked.
Yeah, it's
And-
a compelling
And we have all those
proposition.
jobs
Right.
to implement, to help these companies implement these types of strategies.
What you would do is you would give a lift up to local companies to be the innovators so that they could take more of your products and services and sell them regionally, nationally, and globally. So you would help make them more competitive, and you would get a lot of interest from outside companies like Tesla, like GE, like Johnson & Johnson, that are struggling with how to innovate, not just the breakthrough technology, but the way we're going to transform the industries we're in. How does healthcare get transformed? How does education get transformed? How does transportation get transformed? And instead of being the last place that these companies come to, because it's so hard to break in here, what if we were the first place they came and we welcome them to create those whole new models?
We could then become maybe the richest place in the world again, like we were at the Industrial Revolution.
Well,
we
we
could
could
change
become-
the whole dynamic.
We could become the innovator again, where everybody would be paying attention to us, where our size wouldn't be a disadvantage, because when you're talking about the exploration
sandbox
of new
issue.
models, the sandbox, guess what? It's cool to be small. It's strategic to be small. Even billionaires like Elon Musk know they need the safe conditions in that sandbox to accelerate the path of their ideas into the marketplace. We should be on that path here.
That is truly some progressive
Yeah.
thinking that I think the state needs more of. I think thoughts like that we need to implement, because just listening to you, it seems like there's no downside to what you're saying. The only downside is it would take a tremendous amount of work from a policy standpoint,
Right.
from our policy leaders.
Well,
It would take a lot of work, a lot of heavy lifting.
Well, the
But
downside, and one of the challenges with it, which makes it easier for me to sit here and talk to you about the idea and harder to put it in place,
Sure.
is that the incumbents here, the folks that are in those industries here today, right, if they're not the innovator and someone else is coming in and wants to innovate here, and we want to position ourselves as the place that can happen, they're going to scream because it's affecting their local business. And our message to them should be, we want to help you innovate and get stronger and create higher wage jobs. We don't want you to stand in the way of innovation in these markets. And we need to have the political will to be able to say, on average, we are going to support the innovator. Here's how we'll help you be the innovator, right?
Right.
We're not going to allow you to block, so the taxi cab drivers that try to block Uber from coming in, we should have been the first state where Uber came to demonstrate that their model could work, and then we should have helped.
That's a great example.
We should have helped the taxi cab drivers in order to innovate, to get stronger, not just to
become
protect
more
what was.
efficient.
To become more efficient, to deliver more customer value,
Right.
to leverage technology in new ways to change the customer experience. That's what innovation is all about.
That's right.
And not protecting the existing interest from innovators.
It seems like we're better off if we're all eating from a larger pie than if we're all fighting over the smaller pie. And that's the mindset that I think you're talking about. Fighting over the little we have here instead of growing the economy with innovation.
Well, you can see where that mindset comes from because we're the smallest state in
I
the
see
country.
it all the time.
So we have this, I call it small state
I've lived it for
syndrome.
35 years.
But if you flip that on its head to what we're talking about, to say our size is a real advantage, and you can use our small size in order to innovate and to help other people innovate, now everybody gets better here that wants to innovate. And people who want to innovate from around the world want to be here because they want to access our sandbox. That's the pitch. Easier to say than to do, because if you're the taxi cab drivers here and you see Uber coming in, your first inclination is to try to pass laws to block
Regulate
that.
them out.
smuggle them out so that we
Right.
don't have to innovate. So who suffers?
That's very regressive.
Rhode Island citizens suffer because they don't get at better services and a better experience.
And they pay more.
And we don't create companies that are innovating, not just here in Rhode Island, because our market is small and our population is flat. It only works if you innovate here and then you export to the country and to the world. And so we need more of what economists call a traded economy. More stuff that we can produce here and make here, services we create here, but then we scale to deliver them across the country. So the high-wage jobs stay here.
Could be like Silicon Valley type
That's-
thing, only it's Rhode Island.
The difference
With the
is-
regulatory climate, with our own regulatory climate and our own implementation of industries, as opposed to just
Right.
developing technologies.
We should be willing to take technologies that get developed in Silicon Valley that are struggling to find a place in the marketplace and say, we have the market conditions here for you to accelerate the path to market success. We're all about market making here. We're about turning on the innovation switch to allow leaders and companies to leverage the unique characteristics of Rhode Island in order to get better faster, to sell products and services nationally and globally.
And I think if someone were to make that argument or to make that pitch to a tech CEO or the different industry CEOs, I think that would be a compelling, I think you'd have people that were willing to listen and willing to try it.
Well, what good is the technology if
you
it
can't
doesn't have
implement
a model that allows you to deliver it to customers? And
And test it.
it doesn't actually get embraced by customers. You can have the fanciest technology, but unless you can make the market around that technology, you're not delivering value to customers or creating value for your company. We should be about innovation downstream, closer to the customer delivery side, and not think that we're going to compete with Silicon Valley or even replace. We're never going to be Boston. We can get better just at developing technologies here, and I think we should continue to do it. But that's not going to transform our economy. What will transform our economy is when we all see ourselves as part of a state and an economy where everyone gets to participate in helping all of us as people, organizations, and our communities get better, faster, and to innovate and to lead the way.
Create our own game.
Create our own future.
Our own future.
Like, let's create our own future, but let's create a different future where we're playing a different game than the one the larger states are playing. Because we could, you see a chart that says we move up to 45. From 50, and we should celebrate that from 50 to 45. But the truth is, we could move all the way up to 40, and still the
Not
business
be
climate
feeling well,
is
sure.
not as good as some other business climates. We're always going to be a higher priced place to live and work. We can get better, but the real ticket to our differentiation or compelling proposition is when we harness innovation downstream. Customer experiences, new markets, you do it here, and then you take what you develop outside of the state and the region to the country of the world.
Very interesting concept, to say the least. But one thing I did want to talk to you about is, you sound like you obviously, you're Mr. Innovation. You believe in it, and I agree with you. I agree with you. I think innovation is the key, and I think the governor would agree. And I think technology is fantastic. I think it improves our lives in ways we don't even recognize that our lives are being improved. I think that a lot of people tend to fear technology when they shouldn't. That being said, it's a little scary to me when I hear someone like Tesla CEO Elon Musk say things like, we need to watch out for artificial intelligence, we need to be on our guard, we need to create a regulatory agency to keep an eye on this. Because usually innovators don't like regulatory agencies. Usually innovators are, people think we should go all the way and speed it up and, step on the gas. So for him to say that he fears artificial intelligence, which is abbreviated to AI, as an almost existential threat to humanity in some instances, that is chilling. That is a little bit scary. Can you speak to that? Do you share those concerns? What is he talking about? What's going on here?
Well, what he's talking about is if you play out this, all this technology development, right, and you play it out to the extreme, you can see the disruption it causes to industries. It affects real people, real jobs. We saw how many people are losing even their retail jobs because of what Amazon is doing. So the question is, do we argue against the technology because of the human impact impact it has, or do we make sure that technology is developed in a way that humans are driving the pace at which they go into a marketplace, making sure that we're protecting people that are dislocated. So if we're going to put the taxi cab drivers out of business because they didn't innovate, which I think they should have,
Sure.
I still have empathy for people who make a living as a taxi cab driver.
Of course.
So how do we make sure that they land on their feet, that they take their skills and can redeploy them so
Sure.
that they can make enough money to support their families? So I always talk about the human side of innovation. What Elon's talking about is artificial intelligence. If we keep building this capacity, and the tools necessary to take huge amounts of data and to have and make decisions with that data, all the way up to and including maybe we don't need to drive our own cars, that artificial intelligence can actually handle it, and the truth is handle it better than we can.
Take me to Narragansett Town Beach and it could do it from here.
That technology exists today, but as I said earlier, the models, the systems, all the regulations, how insurance is going to change. What does it mean for people who make a living driving today? I mean, I'd be fine with an autonomous car taking me to and from work every day.
So would I.
But what if I made my living where I drove a truck,
I
drove a car?
That's a good thing, because less people would complain about my driving.
That's right. We know how Rhode Island drivers are.
And I'm one of them.
All of these technologies have an impact on humans. And
Sure.
we need to understand it, be talking about it. The government needs to understand that it has a responsibility to make sure that the regulatory schemes and the legal structures reflect the norms of society and where we want to go. They're way behind. Technology is moving way faster than our ability to effectively regulate it. So you talked about AI. Today I talked to someone who's in the synthetic biology world, building the technology not just to read the human genome, but to write the human genome, where we could actually program human life. You want to talk about things that are scary and that we better get our arms around, because this technology is happening. Now, what does it mean for us in our community, in society? What regulations do we need or not need? What laws are going to reflect
things
that?
could look like a science fiction movie quickly.
It
could look like Blade Runner relatively quick.
I think it will. You already
wow.
look. Well, you look
That's
at
a little
today.
frightening.
If
That is a little frightening.
If I take you back 10 years ago, you would never have envisioned the technology that you use today to do
absolutely
things that you wouldn't even imagine 10 years ago.
That's right.
Let's take that out 10 years, take that out 20 years. We will not even recognize how technology has exploded and what it's going to enable us as humans to do. We better be paying attention. Doesn't mean we should stop
Halt
it.
it, right.
It means we should be involved in it.
Because in the 1600s, there were groups of people, they were called Luddites, I believe,
Yes,
and they would
yes.
destroy farming equipment because they said this farming equipment is costing peasants or farmers jobs.
Right.
Fast forward, and you see that the farming equipment has improved our lives in unbelievable ways. So it's a delicate balance, because you're making good point, and I think obviously Mr. Musk makes good points, but at the same time, you don't want to be thought of in 50 years as a Luddite. You want to someone who got in the way of technology.
What the takeaway to me is, even if you wanted to, you're not going to slow down these new technologies. They're going to find a way around the world to be developed, right? Whether they're going to be used for good or for evil, and that's a relative term, that we could disagree on what means good and what means evil, but the truth is that it's up to humans to determine how we use these new tools. It's humans who elect people, who create the laws, who create the regulations that we live by. We've got to pay attention. We can't abdicate our responsibility for how this evolves to someone else and then point fingers at them. We have to be directly engaged in creating a better future that uses technology to help us be more productive humans, more effective humans, to unleash and create more value and more shared value, so that it's not so the rich keep getting richer and people on the bottom end of the economic spectrum keep getting left behind. How about we actually talk about technology and innovation for everyone, that evens the playing field, that makes it more possible for everyone to play? These are the strategies that we should be talking about here in our community, and around the country.
It does seem like we're living in exciting times, but it does seem like we're living in, at the same time, some frightening times. but I don't think anyone can argue that it's a fascinating time to be alive.
It's an amazing time to be alive. I feel incredibly blessed. It's changing every day. I feel like a kid in a candy store watching all of these new ideas, new technologies, new approaches, and now I'm with a sense of urgency, trying to say, let's play with the parts to combine and recombine them to change people's life, to get everybody in our community to participate,
Sure.
and to benefit from that. It's in us to do that. I'm glad we live in a world where there's a lot of emerging technology that makes a better and stronger future possible. I think it's a cool thing.
Well, fascinating times. It's been a fascinating conversation, Saul. I appreciate you coming in and
Glad to
having
do
this
it.
talk with me today.
Glad to do it.
All right. Well, thank you very much. And again, I'm Russ Moore. This is Saul Kaplan, and talking about the technology and innovation and how it's going to affect our lives and how Rhode Island could capitalize on this innovation and become an innovation economy by becoming a test case for some major industries and some major companies. I want to thank everyone for tuning in, and this is Russ Moore from GoLocalProv.com here at the Navigate Credit Union Broadcasting Center.